Hi everybody, this is Mr. Pinner, and we're going to look at Chapter 11 with basically going into World War II. And if you recall, during Winston Churchill and FDR meeting in the Atlantic, they created what was known as the Atlantic Charter. And that determined that Germany was the first priority, not Japan. Since Germany was the first priority, the number one thing they had to do is keep Great Britain supplied and able to fight, since that was our main ally still over in Europe. And it was Germany's crucial idea to basically use what was known as the U-boat, the Unterseeboot, to actually try and starve Great Britain out. So now we had to try to figure out how to get the convoys across. Now, we had been dealing with the U-boats in World War I, but they have been dramatically updated, and they are a much more lethal killing machine. And even though we used convoys in World War I, we were not aware of the fuel that the U-boats could use. Germany also had developed another U-boat known as a milk cow, at which could refuel and replenish U-boats while they were in the middle of the Atlantic. This increased their range dramatically, some of which could already go to the United States. Now even more could go there. So they basically functioned off the Atlantic coast from basically north of New York all the way down to Corpus Christi, down by Texas, in the Gulf of Mexico. So we basically kind of had this idea or misconception that the Atlantic created a safe barrier for us, but Germany was off the shore and able to still do things. So from 1939 to 1943, Germany calls that time the happy time because the U-boats are pretty much unopposed. And some of the things that were done to try and stop the Germans was to try and seize their coding device, which was known as the Enigma machine, which is quite a dramatic machine.
In 1942, as the Pacific Fleet recovered from the devastating attack on Pearl Harbor, the Atlantic Fleet faced its own crucial test against German U-boats. With America thrust into World War II on the side of Great Britain, Germany's Admiral Karl Dönitz sent his submarines to the U.S. Atlantic coastline to attack U.S. merchant ships. The objective? To starve Great Britain into submission. The U.S. ships carried food and supplies to the beleaguered island nation, which was under relentless attack from the German Air Force. Without adequate supplies from America, the Germans believed, Great Britain would be forced to surrender. The U.S. Navy's mission was to make sure enough supplies reached Great Britain to keep that country in the war. The German strategy nearly worked. During the first 8 months of U.S. participation in the war, from December 1941 to August 1942, U-boats destroyed more than 100,000 tons of supplies off the U.S. coast. In mid-ocean, losses of supplies destined for Great Britain were even worse, totaling 1.2 million tons. Things looked dark for the U.S. and its allies. Great Britain appeared certain to run out of food and supplies. But then, in the spring of 1943, the tide turned in the Battle of the Atlantic. The Atlantic's stormy weather in December 1942 hampered the small German submarines, which could only track and attack Allied shipping by cruising on the surface, allowing more merchant ship convoys to reach Great Britain. In addition, Allied intelligence gained a real advantage when it used a captured German encryption device, the Enigma machine, to read the enemy's communications. From then on, the Allies could direct convoys around waiting German submarine wolf packs. More and better equipped U.S., British, and Canadian warships, escort carriers, and planes joined the fight in the Atlantic. Finally, American shipyards began turning out new supply ships faster than German U-boats could sink them. By 1943, the Allies were actually increasing the tonnage of supplies reaching British ports. U-boats would remain a threat throughout the war, but the transatlantic lifeline to Great Britain remained intact, leading to ultimate victory.
So let's recap how the Allies were able to turn the tide on the Germans in the Atlantic. Probably the biggest thing was decoding the Enigma machine. Second was the use of new devices such as radar, depth charges, and sonar. And thirdly, the use of escort carriers, which are carriers that are smaller in size than traditional, and they were effectively able to provide air cover, which then diminished the success of the U-boats.